Hi again, I'm Eugenia Gamble, author of Tending the Wild Garden, Growing in the Fruit of the Spirit. And I'm delighted to have a few more minutes with you as you can continue or prepare to begin this study. As you prepare to taste the different aspects of the fruit of the Spirit, it's helpful to begin by thinking about the Spirit herself. Now, before you stop the video and run screaming from the room at my use of the feminine pronoun, let me stop you for a moment. I felt like that too years ago in Hebrew class when we began our first work in translating the Hebrew of the Old Testament. It was then that I learned that spirit, ruach, in Hebrew, is always feminine. In the New Testament, spirit, pneuma, is ordinarily neuter. So she and it are the pronouns of the original texts of the Bible. Now, of course, God is not gendered. God is all. So as much as I can, I don't use pronouns for God or for spirit unless the sentence becomes so convoluted that it loses its thread, and then I generally use she. I know that this is fraud. When these days we think of anything that is inclusive in pronouns as somehow political. It's not. Just hold on to that. It's not. It's biblical. And I hope that you will let all of that roll around inside of you a bit as you study. There may be healing work for you to do with these words as well. At any rate, my earliest memory I have come to associate with the Holy Spirit. I was only about 2.5 years old. The memory surrounds the death of my grandmother. Both of my parents worked at the time, and we lived with my paternal grandmother, who cared for me while my folks were at the office. I loved her, and she loved me. In many ways, she was a Victorian lady. While we were not wealthy, especially after my grandfather's death the year before, my grandmother still had her breakfast served to her in bed with a flower from her garden and a bud vase on her tray. I was wheeled in my stroller to sit beside her each morning, and she fed me bacon tidbits and bits of toast softened in her soft-cooked egg. This I have been told, but do not actually remember. In those days, funerals were often held from the home in the Deep South, and that was the case with my grandmother. Somewhere in the process of making arrangements, it was decided that I was too young to stay for the funeral, which included an open casket in front of the fireplace in the living room where I'm sitting right now. This is where my own memory becomes distinct. At the time of the funeral, I was taken by my older cousin across the street to his house to play with his new electric train set. After we crossed the street, I stopped and looked back at the house. And I remember seeing the mourners climb the steps to the front porch, men in their black suits and women in theirs with their hats with those tiny eye veils. At that moment, I saw a bright golden light, a bright golden aura that surrounded my house. It was the most fascinating thing. It was spiky, and it looked like the crown of the Statue of Liberty dancing. I can see it clearly even now, almost 70 years later. I remember I was not afraid. I remember knowing instantly that aura was God's amazing surrounding presence that was there for our family, for my grandmother. It was the Spirit being Spirit for us. In this chapter, we spend time considering the different ways the Spirit is described in the Bible and what each of those aspects has to teach us about the one who indwells us and both plants a garden and brings its fruit to harvest. And the main thing I want you to know as you move forward with the study is that you are indwelt by the powerful, mysterious Spirit of God. One of my favorite paintings is of Jesus and the disciples at the Last Supper, with the beloved disciple resting his head on Jesus' chest. I can hardly imagine what it would have been like to listen to the very heartbeat of God. The truth of our faith is that if we ourselves place our hands on our hearts or on another pulse point and open ourselves to the mystery, we discover that there is another heartbeat beneath our own. We often talk about this reality in fairly domesticated ways. We talk about inviting Jesus into our hearts or being filled with the Spirit as if there is a time when that is not the case. What I'd like for you to ponder in this chapter is what it means for you to be Spirit's dwelling place. There are a lot of scriptures in this chapter for you to consider, and I know that trying to grapple with Spirit is hard indeed. How can one describe breath? How does one nail down and define a dancing golden aura? But don't worry about this excessively. Don't worry about understanding and systematizing everything about Spirit. You can't. Simply focus on how you experience the Spirit in your own life or how you long to do so. That will be enough. The core truth that we need to glean as we grapple with the fruit of the Spirit is that the fruit is what Spirit does in us because it is who Spirit is in us. So as you prepare for this chapter, start by feeling your heartbeat. Thank Spirit for unfailing presence. Then ask yourself, what does it mean for you to be a dwelling place for all that Spirit is and does? And bring those thoughts with you to your group. See you next time.